Lymph nodes are principal secondary lymphoid organs of the body. There's hundreds of lymph nodes are found throughout the body. Two main functions of lymph nodes: they cleansing the lymph, they act as lymph filters. Macrophages remove and destroy microorganisms and debris that enters lymph, prevent unwanted substances from being delivered to blood. And number two, they act as immune system activation. They offer a place for lymphocytes to become activated and mount an attack against antigens. Structure of a lymph node vary in shape and size, but most are bean-shaped. Trabeculae divide the node into compartments. Cortex is the superficial area that contains follicles with germinal centers that are heavy with dividing B cells. Medulla has medullary cords and medullary sinuses. Lymph enters the node via the afferent lymphatic vessels and exits the concave side at the hilum via the efferent lymphatic vessels. Lymph nodes can become secondary cancer sites if metastasizing cancer cells become trapped in node. Cancer-infiltrated lymph nodes are swollen but usually not painful, a fact that helps distinguish cancerous nodes from those infected by microorganisms.
Alright, so after talking about the lymph nodes, we're going to show you where the lymph nodes are in the human body. We have the cervical lymph nodes, which is in your neck region on each side. There is the axillary one, which is in your armpit region. And then down on the bottom, you have the inguinal lymph nodes, which is on each side of your groin area. Now these lymph nodes contain lymph fluid that goes around into your vessels, or through your lymph vessels. And then we have our ducts up here. We have the right lymphatic duct. This drains into the right subclavian vein and the right internal jugular. Then we have the left lymphatic duct. This drains into the left subclavian vein and the internal jugular. The left lymphatic duct, or thoracic duct, is actually bigger because it has more lymph going into it, considering it has the left side of the head, the left arm, and pretty much everything else in the body goes to this one. As for the right lymphatic duct, it contains lymph from the right side of the head, the left or the right arm, and then the thoracic. So that's why the reason the left lymphatic duct is a lot bigger. We have the thymus, which is one of the lymph organs that we have. And the thymus, the helper T cells actually mature there. It's pretty much like a schooling there for them to mature. We have the spleen, and inside the spleen there is the red pulp and white pulp. The red pulp recycles red blood cells, as for the white pulp that is immune surveillance. The cisterna chyli drains into the thoracic duct, and it pretty much is like where all the lymph flows through. And these are the lymph nodes of the human body.
Okay, another part of the lymphatic system are the tonsils. We have the pharyngeal tonsil, the palatine tonsil, and the lingual tonsil. The pharyngeal tonsil is located in the posterior wall of the nasopharynx. The palatine tonsil is at the posterior end of the oral cavity, and the lingual tonsil is at the base of the tongue. The palatine tonsil is actually the largest of the tonsils and is the most often infected. And the pharyngeal tonsil is also known as adenoids. The tonsil's function is to gather and remove pathogens in food or air, trapping the bacteria. They also contain follicles with germinal centers and scattered lymphocytes. Antibodies and antigens are very important to the lymphatic system. An antibody, which is kind of shaped like a Y right here, is a protein molecule that is released by a plasma cell and binds specifically to an antigen. Antibodies are also known as immunoglobulins. This is an antigen on the outside of a pathogen. Antigens are substances or parts of a substance, living or non-living, that is recognized as foreign by the immune system. They activate the immune system and react with immune cells or their products. Another very important part of the lymphatic system are T cells and B cells. T cells and B cells both protect against antigens. An example is bacteria, toxins, viruses, mismatched red blood cells, or cancer cells. Specifically, T cells manage the immune response, and some also attack and destroy infected cells. B cells produce plasma cells, which secrete antibodies. Antibodies then mark the antigens for destruction by phagocytosis or other means.
Lacteals are specialized lymph capillaries present in intestinal mucosa. They absorb digested fat and they deliver fatty lymph chyle to the blood. The Peyer's patch are found in the small intestine and they destroy bacteria and generate memory lymphocytes. MALT, which stands for mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, helps protect from pathogens, and they're located in mucous membranes and the digestive tract.
These are the clinical problems of the lymphatic system, and we're going to start with lymphangitis. This is when your lymphatic vessels and your lymphatic system are inflamed. The vasa vasorum becomes congested with blood, and then this results in the red lines on your skin. They're very sensitive, and these are all of the vessels in your lymphatic system that are all red and inflamed because they are filled with blood. The second clinical problem of the lymphatic system is lymphedema, and this is a clinical problem that you'll have that can cause swelling of any part of your body, and this is caused by swelling or a tumor that is blocking the lymph fluid in your lymphatic vessels. It could go away on its own if your vessels enlarge, or you'll have to get surgery to help cause the swelling to go down. Buboes is another part of the clinical problems, and this is when your lymph nodes are swollen. It can take place in any of the regions of your lymph nodes. This one is a cervical one, and it's behind your ears. And this is when bacteria is trapped inside your lymph node and it cannot get out, so it swells up. This can be caused due to a cold, a bug bite, or sometimes even cancer in your lymph nodes. The last clinical problem with the lymphatic system is a splenectomy, and this means the removal of your spleen, meaning surgery. Spleens can rupture when they're infected, which would result in this procedure. If you take it out, the liver and bone marrow of your body would take over its function. If your spleen has an infection, you can leave it in there, but there is a chance it will regenerate and heal itself.
Now we're going to talk about the distribution and structure of lymphatic vessels. So lymphatic vessels offer a one-way system, and they ensure that lymph flows only towards the heart. These include lymphatic capillaries and the larger lymphatic vessels. So lymphatic capillaries are blind-ended vessels, and they weave between tissue cells and blood capillaries. They are absent from the bones, teeth, bone marrow, and central nervous system. They're similar to blood capillaries, but they're more permeable, meaning they absorb more. They can also take up larger molecules and particles that blood capillaries cannot. Lymphatic capillaries have increased permeability due to their endothelial cells that overlap loosely and their many valves that they have. The larger lymphatic vessels are lymph capillaries that drain into increasingly larger lymph vessels called collecting lymphatic vessels. They have structures and tunics similar to veins, except they have thinner walls and anastomies more frequently. The larger lymphatic vessels have lymphatic trunks, which are formed by union of larger collecting vessels, and they drain large areas of the body. These include the paired lumbar, the paired bronchomediastinal, the paired subclavian, paired jugular trunks, and the single intestinal trunk. Lymph is delivered from trunks into one of the two large lymphatic ducts, the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. The last thing we're going to talk about is the lymphoid organs. These are grouped into two categories, primary and secondary. The primary organs are where B and T cells both mature. This includes the red bone marrow and the thymus. The secondary lymphoid organs are where lymphocytes mature and they first see and meet their antigens and are activated. This includes lymph nodes, spleen, MALT, tonsils, Peyer's patch, and appendix.
Okay, so we've talked about the lymph nodes, the lymphatic ducts, the lymphatic organs, the tonsils, antibody and antigen, lacteals, Peyer's patches, MALT, clinical problems, lymphatic vessels, and lymphoid organ types.